Why? Just speak my mind. Okay. Shamayim, they speak their mind also. Why? You didn't think. Now, why am I pressing this issue? If everything I just said came from an average person, mistake. Chatanu avinu pashanu. I'm sorry. I'm never going to do it again. I'm always going to think before I ask. But what if a rabbi asked these questions? In fact, not if a rabbi asked these questions. What if a rabbi said much worse than this? Is that as excusable as an average person? The Australian Times calls for an apology from a rabbi who likened child sex abuse to diarrhea. Who is this rabbi? A leading rabbi compared child abuse to diarrhea, saying it's embarrassing, but it's nobody's business. Meaning that somebody that was molested, it's embarrassing that he was molested, but it's nobody's business. That's what a rabbi said. What kind of rabbi is this? Rabbi is supposed to learn Torah. Have yirat shamayim, teach yirat shamayim. A rabbi is saying child sex abuse is not a big deal. This is inexcusable. What else did this rabbi say? In 2013, he says the following, and let me ask you a question. Do you sometimes forget to say ala mechiyah, which is the blessing after you eat? Because that's much, much worse than being molested. The fact that you forgot the blessing is worse than the fact that you got molested. Meaning you feel bad about being molested, you should feel worse about forgetting a blessing that the rabbi has decreed. Which is completely false, by the way. But he said this. Now, if a young girl or boy got molested, and he went to the rabbi for, please help me out, I'm traumatized. I'm traumatized. Somebody violated me, and there's no way to undo it. Instead of telling it, listen, I'm sorry it happened, this is horrible, what do you say? Why are you making a big deal out of it? Did you ever forget to make a blessing? That's much worse than you getting molested. How religious is that kid going to become now? Not so much. Let's see what else he said. Same rabbi. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's hardly a kid who comes to a yeshiva program that hasn't been molested sexually. Meaning, he's telling somebody, is complaining to him, listen, Rabbi, I got molested. Horrible. Somebody violated me. What are you making a big deal out of it? Everybody that goes to yeshiva gets molested. There's hardly anybody that doesn't get molested. What a support system for the yeshiva world. Who is this rabbi? Who is this rabbi? How come we haven't mentioned his name yet? I'm cooking. If that wasn't enough, Rabotai Karim, he says the following. So I said this to the girl. He actually now himself is telling other people what he said to a girl that came to him after she was molested. Like, he's proud of what he says. And you can find all this online, by the way. It's not just your own tube. You'll find this online, Bezrat Hashem, you'll see it. And he says it's in a lecture to the public, teaching. So I said this to a girl. Her family comes from Russia. And I said, what do you think? You're the only one that was molested? You think that your mother and your grandmother back in Russia made it through their teenage years without being molested by a shiksa? By a shegitz, by a disgusting man? So what? A girl got molested. He says, well, you don't think your mother got molested, your grandmother got molested by some evil guy? So what? He got molested. So what? They got molested. They stopped their life. They wouldn't. They wouldn't get married. They wouldn't raise a family. What are you so fragile about? What happened to you? If I was the girl's father, I'd murder him on stage, live, like Pinchas. Him right next to the molester. Why? Because it's very possible he caused more damage than the molester. Now, after this came out, it was all over the news, and they wanted an apology from this rabbi. But years have passed, 7 years have passed since. Almost nobody in the world knows who this story is about. Sadly enough, it's not surprising who it is. Menace Friedman is the rabbi in all of these. In February 1st, 2013, sex abuse victims sue rabbi over comments. The Sydney Morning Herald. You find this on the news. All of what I just said is in this article and others. Many, many articles. Any other rabbi that would have said such a thing would have been buried long ago and never been let to even have a YouTube channel. Now, am I mentioning it to bring shame to him? Partly. And I'll tell you why also. But I also tell you that there's another reason for it. You see, Rabotai, when you teach sheker, when you teach lies, there has to be a consequence. When you make fun of child molestation, when you make it as if it's not a big deal to molest children to the public, that means that you don't think it's a big deal. Which means that your children will also think it's not a big deal. So is it any surprise that 4 years later we have the following headline in the newspaper in Pittsburgh? Day school teacher suspected of sexual abuse in Pittsburgh. Rabbi Nissan Friedman, 26 years old, and the son of an influential Minnesota-based rabbi, Menace Friedman, molested no less than 3 kids, caught on Shabbat while in the act. As the article writes, we're absolutely certain there's at least 3 cases or more. When you make fun of the Torah, you make fun of the law of homosexuality, where Kadosh Baruch Hu himself writes it's an abomination, and you say, it's not an abomination. That means you don't think it's an abomination. That means that you don't think that child molestation is an abomination either. Because that's what homosexuals do, by the way. If anybody hasn't noticed, homosexuals are many times the child molesters. Child molesters are always homosexual. So when somebody makes fun of it and says, it's not an abomination, and people think, why are you making such a big deal out of it? He meant something else, Rabbi. He meant something else? Yeah, he meant that's not a big deal. And his son got the teaching from him, and 26 years later, he was a teacher of a school and molested a few kids. You see, Rabotai, when we speak out against Reshaim, it's not for ego, it's not for money, it's not for popularity. It's to warn you. It's to warn you. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, but you've already said enough about these people. Why more? What is this? What new is this going to bring? You see, there's a rule in the Torah. It's a very, very serious rule in the Torah. That Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is fear of Hashem. And that's why the Chachamim and the Sanhedrin were very, very careful not to give people the death penalty unless they were certain that these people were murderers. If somebody was a murderer, the Sanhedrin, the wisest men of all time, would question, would get witnesses. And what if the guy that is being accused of murder didn't have any witnesses to support his cause, and he himself didn't have anything to say? Would they just kill him? No. The Sanhedrin would start looking for ways. Wait, did you kill him because you thought he was a Nazi? So you thought that you were under threat maybe? Because if that's the case, it's not murder. You were defending yourself. It's allowed. Did you kill him because he surprised you and you just weren't sure what you were doing? Did you kill him because, like, they're looking to get you out. They're not looking to kill you. The Sanhedrin are not looking to kill you on a capital case. Because if you're guilty, it's death penalty. But what about someone that has the accusal, is being accused of being a machtia rabim, causing people to go to Christianity, causing people to go against Hashem? What about him? Someone says, look, this guy is trying to get people to be Messianic Jews, really Christians in disguise. This guy is telling people that homosexuality is not a sin, it's not an abomination, it's nothing. This guy is telling people to go worship Buddha. They're accusing you of this. After you brought to the Bedim, Sanhedrin, they kill you. So what does the Sanhedrin do with him if he has nothing to do to defend himself? Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, page 29a, says the following. Ve'en to'anim lamesit. The court does not plead on behalf of someone that causes people to sin, even if it's a capital case. Meaning, you don't have something to defend yourself, we're just going to kill you. Yeah, but the murderer, the guy that's being accused of murder, you helped him, hopefully, to try to get him out of it. But me, I'm just being accused of idolatry, and I'm being accused of getting people to go to idolatry, and that's it. You're not even asking, you're not trying to get me out? No. What? You're much worse than the murderer. Doesn't that sound evil? Only if you think God's evil. Where do we get this from? Hashem himself. The Gemara says we learn this from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Amar Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina. Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina says, the instigator, the guy that causes people to sin, the mesit, is different than the potential murderer, the murderer. Why? We learn this from the merciful one. We learn this from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, where he writes in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 9, have no mercy, nor shall you protect him. On this person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if a person causes people to sin, you are forbidden from having mercy on him. On the murderer, you're allowed to have mercy. But on a person that causes people to sin, no mercy, not allowed to have mercy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself writes it. Sefer Dvari, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 9, where he says the following. It starts actually in verse 7. If your brother, the son of your mother, or your son, or your daughter, or the wife of your bosom, or your friend who is like your own soul, your best friend, will entice you secretly, saying, let us go and worship the gods of others, that you did not know, you or your forefathers, from the gods of the people that are all around you, those near to you, or those far to you, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. You shall not accede to him, and not hearken to him. Your eyes shall not take pity on him. You shall not be compassionate nor conceal him. Rather you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to kill him, and the hand of the entire people afterwards. You shall pelt him with stones until he dies. For he sought to make you stray from near Hashem your God, who took you out of Egypt from the house of slavery. Rabotai, a person that teaches things that are against the Torah, whether it be Christianity or it be some other false ideology, is worse than a murderer. And the Gemara says this person, you're not allowed to have any mercy on them. It's forbidden. It's like eating pork, to have mercy on such people. You have to expose them until it's over. Can't give up. Can't stop. Why? It's mitzvah from the Torah. Mitzvah from the Torah. Where do we learn that we cannot have any mercy on these people? The The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 29a, continues, says, Rav Shmuel Bar Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, of Rav Yonatan, where do we learn this from? That the significance of the Machtia Rabim is so bad. It says we learn this from the serpent. Well, unlike Adam, when Adam said, Hashem says, what happened? Why'd you sin? Adam says, it's the wife's world, it's the wife that you gave me. He asked Chava, Chava, what'd you do? She says, it's the serpent, it's the snake's fault. But then when it got to the snake, Hashem says, Arurata. You are cursed. He didn't tell you why'd you do it. He didn't give the snake a chance to speak. Why? He is a Machtia Rabim. Once you cause other people to sin, you lost your right to speak. You lost your right to defend yourself. And this is why it's Alacha. Alacha in the Rambam. The Rambam, Ilchot Tshuva. Chapter 4. In Alacha number 1, the Rambam writes there are 24 deeds which hold back Tshuva. Meaning a person does such things, HaKadosh Baruch Hu make it more difficult for them, nearly impossible for them to do Tshuva. In Alacha number 2, the Rambam writes clearly, among the 24 acts that withhold tshuva, that hold back tshuva, there are 5 deeds which cause the path of tshuva to be locked. Meaning, no tshuva. There is no tshuva. What is it? 1 who separates himself from the community. When they repent, he will not be together with them, and he will not have the opportunity of sharing their merit. Somebody that pretty much doesn't want to be part of Klal Yisrael, wants to live in some mountain by himself while the rest of the community needs him, doesn't want to be part. That's terrible. Okay. We'll learn about that topic, why it's so terrible later on. 2, a person who contradicts the words of the sages. What? Abaye said it. Rava said it. Nah, they're just rabbis. What? Rabbi Nachman said? No. Rabbi Abaye said? No. I have a different opinion. No, I don't think they're right. Someone who contradicts the words of the sages without any precedent, without any proof. Like he just decides that this is not. Torah says it's an abomination, he decides it's not an abomination. Torah says this is a sin, he says it's not a sin. Torah says wasting sin is a sin, he decides no, it's not a sin. What? Stop with this generation. Such a person, Rabotai, contradicts the words of the sages. The controversy that he provokes will cause him to cut himself off from them, and thus he will never know the way of tshuva. 3, someone who makes fun of mitzvot. Someone who makes mitzvot. No. Fear of Hashem. Well, how can you? What are you afraid of Hashem? What, are you crazy? Afraid of Hashem? Why would you be afraid? Hashem owes us. We're in the exile for 2,000 years. It's our fault that he doesn't want to speak to us. Every Jew is going to heaven. You know, you heard this before, right? Manis the Menace and the rest of the clowns that we talk about. To make fun of the mitzvot. Dror Kazuto saying, if your wife doesn't want to go to the mikveh, you can be with her anyway. She wants to go to the beach on Shabbat. Go with her for Shlom Bayit. Or another case, he says, I think the Shulchan Aruch should be changed. It's not relevant to this generation, Dror says. Dror decided that Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch is not relevant to this generation. Dror decided. Dror, the bird, decided. Scoffs at mitzvot. He considers them degrading. Modesty. Come on, what? He will not pursue them or fulfill them. He does not fulfill mitzvot. How can he merit to do tshuva? 4, someone who makes fun of rabbis. Someone who makes fun of his teachers will cause them to reject and dismiss him, as Elisha Navi did to Gehazi. In the period of rejection, he will not find a teacher or a guide to show him the path of truth. People don't like to hear the truth, so what do? They start making fun of it. This rabbi is extreme, he's fanatic. He says people that violate Shabbat are like idol worshippers. No, he didn't say it, he just repeated it. It says it in the Torah. A person that violates Shabbat is considered an idol worshipper. He just read what it says. You can read it yourself if you'd like. They like to make fun of rabbis. This rabbi always talks about wasting seed. You have a problem, rabbi? Is that because you're talking, you're telling us your real feelings? How come this rabbi knows so much about this? How come they're like making fun? No problem. Tshuva, gone. No tshuva. This, by the way, is the worst punishment in this world, just so you know. Not having the ability to do tshuva. 5. Worst yet. Soneh et התוכחות. שהרי לא הניח לו דרך תשובה. Someone who hates rebuke, hates musar. Why? Why is someone that hates musar going to lose his way to do tshuva? How come this is so horrible? Because this will not leave him a path to do tshuva. The Rambam HaKadosh 900 years ago says, without rebuke there is no tshuva. There is no tshuva. You cannot do tshuva without getting rebuked. Not possible. No, I want to do tshuva the happy way. Okay, Christianity. They make pretend. They make pretend like they did tshuva because they believe in Yoshke, why they murder people on a regular basis. Admonishment, the Rambam writes, leads to tshuva. Atochacha goremet la tshuva. When a person is informed about his sins and is shamed because of them, he will do tshuva. So now, who in this generation dares to say they are smarter than the Rambam? Who says, you want to do tshuva? You have to learn musar. You have to get rebuked. It's the only way. Who is brave enough to put their name next to the Rambam? Now you see, Rabotai, the Rambam was not the only one that taught this. You know who also taught this? Chabad. The very same Chabad that you hear, no, we don't teach musar. Apparently Chabad does not read their own newsletters. January 19 to 25 issue, 2020, meaning a couple of months ago, in the Sipur Hasidi, Hasidic story issue of the Chayenu magazine that's published weekly. It's a subscription-based weekly Torah publication designed specifically for English-speaking community. Talks about different Sipurei Hasidim, Rashi, Chumash, Rambam, Tanya, and so on. They bring, in the Hasidic story section, they bring a story of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the one before the most recent, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who once told a story about 2 brothers. One learned an enormous amount of Torah. Like his father, though, Rabbi Moshe, he favored learning foreign subjects, the Tony Robbins of the world, the Buddhism, philosophy, Friedmanism, all types of stuff. You know, he likes it. He likes the Freudmanicism, all those isms, all those things. He liked it, but he was an expert in the Talmud. He was an expert in the Talmud, an expert in Rambam, in Arbat Turim, in every field of halacha. But because of his philosophical mindset, he sought to rule leniently everywhere, especially in the field of blessings, brachot. The blessing to recite for specific occasions. And what about Kabbalah and Musar? He was against it. He was against Kabbalah. He was against Musar. He liked the Gemara. He liked the Lacha. He liked the Abala Turim. He liked. But Musar? No way. Kabbalah? Hate it. His brother, on the other hand, was not... His name was Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh, was not as much of a scholar as his brother, as his father, or brother. But he had Yirat Shamayim. And he learned Torah, and he learned Musa. What happened with those 2 brothers? The latter one, Rabbi Yehuda, grew up, learned some Torah, got to a point where he was able to finance 10 Talmidei Chachamim to live on his property and teach his kids. Alvay Aleinu, have 10 Talmidei Chachamim, teach Torah, he would debate with them and learn with them, and raise the house full of tzaddikim. What about the scholar that was an expert in halacha, in a Rambam, in a Talmud, but hated Musar and Kabbalah? What happened to him? Became a kofer gamur, studying Torah while smoking cigarettes on Shabbat. Desecrating Shabbat and Yom Tov. Eating tarif. But anytime you would see a rabbi or a poor person says, hey, Kvod Harav, come to my house, but you can't eat anything. Like he knew the law. He knew you can't eat at his house. But, against the law. Why? When you have no Yirat Shamayim, Rabotai, your whole Torah goes to the garbage. Your whole Torah goes to the garbage. Who is this taught by? Chabad. Chabad. This is an issue. A month and a half ago. So the next time your local Chabad rabbi says, no, we don't teach Musar, tell him, do you read the magazine, the Chabad magazine? The Rebbe says otherwise. Chassidut says otherwise. The Baal Tanya says otherwise. You know how many times the Baal Tanya mentions the word Musar in his Tanya? You know how many times the Chabadniks were experts in Musar? Why? Because what is Musar? Musar is to do the best you possibly can to purify yourself as a human being. Your character traits. What's Chassidut? Even more than that. Even more than that. Which means that without Yirat Shamayim, Rabotai, what ends up happening is that a person starts speaking whatever's on their mind. Things like, God needs us, we don't need Him. Why? Because He created us, therefore He needs. Manus Friedman.
We are familiar with God because God needs us more than we need Him. And that's why commandments, 10 commandments, that translation has ruined everything. As soon as you say God has commandments, He's no longer friendly. He's not the one who's needy. Now you got to watch your step because you violated a commandment. That's not Jewish thinking. Jewish thinking is, when God spoke to us at Mount Sinai, He wasn't telling us what we must do, He's telling us what He must have. The kind of world He needs and the kind of world He envisioned when He created it. So God revealed Himself. That's why it's called revelation at Mount Sinai. If we could get this into our thinking, into our educational system, we need God. If He created us, then who needs whom? How did we become the needy ones when He created us? So, well, don't we need to eat and sleep and drink? So, well, that's how He created us.
Said such things on a regular basis. Gehenna? No. How can you burn a soul? What will you do with it? How can you burn a soul? Manus Friedman said such things.
So what is it like to be in hell? There is really a serious, proper definition or description of hell. When you come home to your home, and you don't feel comfortable. That's hell. When you come to the place where you belong, and you don't feel like you belong, that is horrible. The burning in hell is not a fire with little demons with pitchforks. The burning in hell is the embarrassment that a soul feels when it doesn't know how to be a soul anymore. Some souls go back to the world of souls as if they never left. Completely comfortable being a soul. That's heaven. But when you're uncomfortable being a soul, because your soul is so used to being in a body, not being comfortable as a soul among souls, that's hell. How long does it take to readjust? Maximum 12 months. After 12 months, you're in heaven.
Every Jew has a complaint against Hashem. Why? We're in the exile for 2,000 years, suffering. It's our fault that God doesn't want to speak to us. Man is Friedman. Secular people have nothing to be ashamed of. It's not our fault God hasn't spoken to us in 2,000 years or 3,000 years. Man is Friedman.
God forbid. God forbid that God should be punishing us for our sins. Because you know, when you don't talk to your children for 3,000 years, they forget some of the things you tell them.
Making fun of a poor girl that got molested. Every yeshiva person gets molested. What's the big deal? What happened to you? Why so weak? How man is Friedman Chabad still have this Rasha Merusha hosted in their Batei Knesset on a regular basis? How is Chabad not coming out with video after video separating and distancing themselves from this menuval? How is that possible that this is the first time you have all heard of this? How could it be? How could it be that this secret, that wasn't so secretive from 7 years ago, is buried so deep that even the lawyers don't want to talk about it? That's how much money has been invested into hiding this. Now the video of everything he says, you can only find it in the black web. You can only find the audio of it, which they tried ruining also, but you can find it.
The fear of an avela, the rejection of an avela, is a very potent medicine. And it has to be administered very carefully. I don't know what the percentage is, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there's hardly a kid who comes to a yeshiva, to a program, that hasn't been molested. Sexually molested. And all the children who have been sexually molested have serious emotional imbalances. And the question is why? Why? I used to make it dramatic. I'm talking to this girl who was very, very off the not off the derech. I mean, that's putting it mildly. She decided she hates men, she's going to be a lesbian, why? Because she was molested. And she's been going for therapy, and she's been talking about it. It's been close to 20 years that she's... So I said to her, you're not the only one who was molested. Yeah, she said, oh, I was molested. You're not the only one yet. And let me ask you a question. Do you sometimes forget to say Al HaMikra? She's not keeping Shabbos. I said, do you sometimes forget to say Al HaMikra? She says, that's much worse than being molested. She was very upset. Until she finally calmed down. I said, look, you were 9 years old and you didn't do it. So what Aveda are you guilty of? You forget to say Al HaMikra, that's your Aveda. That's much more serious. So it doesn't bother you that you forgot to say Al HaMikra, but you can't get over the fact that somebody else did an Aveda? In other words, what happened is that we stopped being Jewish in our responses. We've all become psychiatrists. A kid tells you he's been molested, right away you're thinking, oh, emotional damage. What do you know about emotional damage? If a kid comes to you and says, I was molested, you open up a Shulchan Aruch and say, let's see, what's the Aveda? What does it say in Torah if you are inappropriately touched? You know what it says? It says, don't do that. Go home now. If a kid would come and say, this uncle or this counselor is touching me, hey, really? Don't go with him. Not nice. Not nice. That's all. There would be no damage. There would be no trauma. There would be no dropout. The problem is, we tell children how bad certain things are, and then we don't tell them how to handle bad. Midal Rebbe had to write a whole Tanya to convince people, if you have a machshava zola, don't freak out, you're not a tzaddik. It's okay. You're going to have a machshava zola. You have a nefesh alikis, you have 10 keiches aliki, and you're freaking out over a machshava zola. What is it? You're giving Ra too much credit. I could open an office and be busy full time just telling people who have been molested. So, nobody's allowed to touch you. What are you, holy? So you're touched. That's it. So I said to this girl who was really, her family comes from Russia, I said, what do you think, you're the only one who's molested? Do you think your mother and grandmother back in Russia made it through their teenage years without being molested by a shaykhah? So what, they stopped life? They wouldn't get married? They wouldn't raise a family? What are you so fragile? What happened to you?
They invested a ton of money to hide everything I'm telling you. A ton of money. Why? That's what liars do. Now how do you come and say, I'm sorry, I said what I said, I'm an idiot, I'll never do it again? Guess what? I'll be the first guy to say, you know what, you admitted you're wrong. But you're hiding it, you Rasha Merusha. You're hiding that your son is a molester. 3 kids, you menuval. All these kids are traumatized for the rest of their life. You piece of garbage, you're hiding it? You should hide a poster on his face, molester. Why? Because those kids have that on their neshama for the rest of their life. You can't take it away from them. You're hiding it. You're making fun of it. You should be the first one that goes out with a lecture to say, I made a mistake in lectures and with my kids. What's the proof? Look what happened with my kid. What, do you think it's a coincidence that HaKadosh Baruch Hu judged the measure for measure? Measure for measure. The guy's making fun of child molestation. Hashem says, look what I'm going to do to you. Your child's going to be a molester. And by the way, I spoke to a few experts in the field. They tell me that molesters are usually molested too. Amevin yavin. The people that molest were molested also. Rabotai, it's time we speak up against the Reshaim. Why? That's why you have a mouth. That's why you have a mouth. You're going to fulfill mitzvah, say brachot, keep Shabbat, learn Torah, all these wonderful things, fine. Do it. But if you're going to stay quiet when you know that people are going against the Torah, what do we need your mouth for? What do we need your mouth for? It's useless. You're only complaining, what, about the internet connection? The economy is down. We have to use our mouth. We have to speak up. We have to do it because, unfortunately, nobody else is doing it. Not enough. Why? This guy is more popular today than he's ever been. The most absurd thing in the world. Every day comes out with a video, tens of thousands of views. People are watching him. No, he's the greatest mind of the generation. What? Did you listen to the words that he says? You want to rip your hair out. I don't even need to get haircuts anymore. I just rip it with my hands. I stopped watching, I can't, it's mind-boggling to me. But this is why you have to warn people. They don't even know what's dangerous anymore. Because they themselves have no shame. So they don't realize that speaking like this is wrong. Making fun of a molested kid, making fun of Hashem, making fun of the Torah, making fun of the sages. Rabotai, this is evil. And anyone who doesn't speak against it is also evil. Why? You're sitting there doing nothing while blood is being spilled. You're sitting there doing nothing while blood is being spilled. That's evil. You have to be able to let people know. They tell you they listen to these reshaim. Tell them, listen, I know you listen to them. Don't take this personally. It's not against you. I'm just warning you. Here's a few videos. Listen to them. Make your own decision. You don't have to go crazy, start cursing the guy out and having venom coming out of your mouth. Don't make sins. There's no permission to make sins over this. But you have to let people know, take this video, share it with people. Listen, you listen to this guy? I just want you to know, before you press play again on his next lecture, this is who he is. This is who he is. This is what he did. You want to continue listening? Bechavod, you made your choice. But don't ever say, when you go up to Shamayim, no one told you. When your whole mind is distorted and you're more like a Christian than you are a Jew, and you go up to the Bet Din of Shamayim and they give you a decree of 1,000,000 years in Gehenom, don't say, I didn't know. Why? I told you. I told you, you're listening to the wrong teachers. You're listening to the wrong people. Why? It's not a coincidence that a person that makes fun of God also makes fun of people that are victims. It's not a coincidence. If you make fun of God, of course you're going to make fun of people. And this cannot be a small mistake. Why? Number one, rabbis are not allowed to make such mistakes. This is basic humanity. 101. Human. Just being a human. Needless to say, a rabbi. 2, you wouldn't go out and embellish it and talk about it to other people too. Which means he was proud of it. As Rabbeinu Yonah says, a person is who he praises. Lefi ma'alalo. Ish lefi ma'alalo. A person is what he praises. You praise such behavior, that's because that's what you are. You don't think that molestation is a big deal? It's very likely you're a child molester. Why? Because a normal person hears child molestation, shrinks like a little ball of fear. Disgusted, reviled. Ugh! Do you ever see a little pure, beautiful kid? How could somebody hurt such a little beautiful, pure kid? I don't even care if he's Jewish or not. Just a little kid, what did he do to anybody? You're going to touch this kid, and then on top of it, after this kid gets touched, you're making fun of him? If that's not evil, Rabotai, what is? How could this stay buried? How could it stay buried? How? You have a mouth. You have to use it. That's the reality. And that's what the Chazon Ish says. There's a time and a place to use your mouth. Time to make mitzvot. Sometimes the mitzvah is a bracha. Sometimes the mitzvah is a rebuke. Sometimes the mitzvah is to stay quiet. Sometimes the mitzvah is to speak out. You have to know how to use your mouth effectively. Or else it simply becomes turning your number one tool into useless, into a weapon, into something that's just not good. Because you'll be judged for it, of not using it the right way. If you're only saying Lashon Hara with your mouth, that's not going to help you in life. Not in this life or the next one. If you're only complaining about your neighbor, but not against the Reshaim, it's not going to help you in life. It's very critical that people understand every single person needs to warn anybody that they know that listens to these Reshaim that we mentioned, because it's not about who these people are and they have more views or less views and what they have. It has nothing to do with that. It's the damage that they're causing. someone that's a machtia rabim, that causes the public to sin, as the Rambam writes, he is a person that Hashem closes the doors of tshuva. You can't fix stuff like that. Why? You cause people to leave Hashem. You cause people to think that there's no need to do mitzvot because there's no Gehenna. So why should I do it? You cause people, you can't fix that. And because of that, the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says, we judge him harshly. We judge him harshly. No kav zchut. No kav zchut, no second chances, nothing. A person like that, they don't have anything to defend themselves. You have to go against them, no mercy. And I'm telling you, on the way here, I had a Yetzirah. This afternoon, I had a Yetzirah saying, come on, I'm going to bring this garbage up. You really think I want to talk about this filth? And then I realized, that mercy is Yetzirah. That mercy is Yetzirah. Why? Keep it buried. Keep it buried. Millions of people still don't know. Keep it buried. Can't keep it buried anymore. Mercy can sometimes be a bad thing. We learn that from Shaul HaMelech. Shaul was merciful on Amalek. Shmuel HaNavi says, you made a sin against Hashem. You weren't allowed to be merciful against Amalek. A person that makes fun of the Torah is Amalek. Being merciful on him is a mistake, is a sin. No, you don't understand. I understand. I read it. I have eyes. I have ears. Baruch Hashem, I have a brain. That's what he said. That's what he did. That's what his son did. HaKadosh Baruch Hu manages the world precisely. Rabotai, as much as I hate teaching about this stuff, it is a part of the Torah, and we need to learn it.